Manchester United, Craig Burley, discussed plentiful on ESPN FC after their 4-0 defeat against Liverpool. But I want to take this a step further. As opposed to identifying problems, I want to try and find solutions. Day one for Erik Ten Hag when he takes over. What's top of his list to do?
He wants to go in the boardroom. He wants to get all the executives in the ownership. And he wants to turn them upside down and hold them by their ankles. And he wants to shake them to every last dollar comes out of their pocket, and then he needs to spend it. Because they have, as I'm sure almost everybody that's watching this is well aware, I've spent the budget of a small country to be absolutely horrendous. So they have deep pockets. They've spent, and generally spent bad. And now they're going to have to spend again. So they're chasing all that bad money that they've already laid out, but they have no choice. And I'm sure they're going to give him a budget. But I think first and foremost, he needs to make sure he's got that, and he's got the assurances that the decisions that he wants to make in terms of, player recruitment and working with Ranić, if that's the case, and making decisions, are sort of in his control, or he has a semblance of control. Because the recruitment in the last few years has just been, Mark, absolutely horrendous.
I've been looking at the Manchester United squad and the contract expiry of all the players. Now, there were some meaty quotes from Ralf Ranić after the game at Anfield saying we maybe need 6 or 7 new players. But you'll know, having played the game at the highest level, Craig, the players under contract don't have to go anywhere. A lot of them are on a lot of money. Now, Paul Pogba's out of contract in the summer. Juan Mata, Edinson Cavani. Is there any reason why anybody, and there's not many players who are still in contract after that, is there any reason why any of them who are out of contract in the summer should be kept?
Well, certainly not the ones you mentioned. I wouldn't even entertain talking to Paul Pogba about a contract. Waste of time. Just hasn't done enough, won't do enough. Not for that. There's just no value for money there. So when you think about it, this is second free transfer he's probably going to get from Man United. I mean, it's quite scary. And then you got to look to freshen things up with obviously Juan Mata. He's been a very good servant, not criticising him whatsoever. Edinson Cavani is just not a good age. Even Cristiano Ronaldo, don't really want to touch too much on him at the moment because of his circumstances and the tragic loss of his son. But all these players that are at a certain age, the club are going to have to look to the future. And barring one guy who looked as if he was finished 12 months ago, David De Gea, he's been absolutely fantastic. He's been terrific. I think he is a shining light to some of these underachievers at Man United. It's when the going gets tough and you're getting pelters and you're under pressure and you're making mistakes, you don't go and whine about it and whinge about it and feel sorry for yourself publicly. Yeah, you can go home and, you're in a bit of a downer, and we've all been there. But he's a classic example of somebody who's worked his socks off to come through it. And he is now the David De Gea that we remember from, 3-4 years ago. He's been brilliant. But he's been through those really tough times. I mean, he couldn't, at one point, everything that was going on target looked as if it was going in the net. So I think he is a classic example of where some of these other players, big earners who have been underperforming, need to look and say, well, I need to knuckle down. I need to try and come through this period, and I need to be better. Whether they do that or not, or whether, as you said, the big wages are just there and they're happy to take that, remains to be seen. I think there's a mix of them there. I think Ralf Ranić has touched on this, saying that, some of them are just happy to take the wages. And if that's the case, you're never going to get what you want out of those players.
Is the player, Craig, that Erik Ten Hag needs to build his team around currently at Old Trafford, or does that player need to be brought in?
No, he needs to be brought in. They need a combative at least, well, a couple of combative quality midfield players that are leaders, that are workers. You know, we see them at Liverpool, workers as well as quality with Fabinho and others. So Thiago's performance last night. We see them, and we have for the last decade at City with Fernandinho, who's about to leave, but then Rodri, De Bruyne, all these guys that not only have great quality, but have a fantastic work ethic. So he has to bring those players in to build around. Now, there are players that, and one of them has had a hell of a lot of criticism recently, but I do believe there is a much better player in there at the back than we're seeing from Harry Maguire. Now, a lot of people who just look at recent performances will be shouting at this, you don't know what you're talking about. You know, the usual people who get some stats out and don't see the big picture. And I get it. He's not been good. But we shouldn't forget, and we were talking about this in the show last night with Stevie and Robbo, he isn't actually a bad player, but he's lost his way. Let's not forget, there was a bun fight at the time of him leaving Leicester between two clubs, Manchester United and Manchester City. And I'll guarantee you, Mark, if Harry Maguire had gone to Manchester City, we would not be looking at him as the player he is now. And I'll tell you why. One, because he'd have been working with better players. Two, those players set standards that are really high, and if they drop below, then the players dig you out. And three, he's working for a proper coach. He's never really had that at Man United. Man United, the standards are lower than they've ever been. At Man United, they are always looking for a scapegoat. At Man United, he's never had a proper coach. He's got an interim guy at the moment, and he's had a guy before who should never have been managing that football club. And so I do think there is some salvation for the likes of Harry Maguire out there, but he's going to have to figure it out and figure it out quickly, because this is a player that Pep Guardiola coveted, and it was only the fee that put Man City off. And as you well know, Manchester City recently don't generally go and try to sign bad players. So I think there's one or two at United that Ten Hag, and he being one of them, potentially can get a tune out of. But they're going to have to stop feeling sorry for themselves, and they're going to have to raise their standards, because the standards at the other two big clubs that are vying for the title at the moment are really, really high.
Let's wrap this up. And I want to talk about going forward now for Erik Ten Hag and for Manchester United. It's not so much a gap as a chasm between Liverpool and Man City and Manchester United and the rest. So there is no quick fix. But for Man United fans, what's the best that they can hope for that gap to be either closed or narrowed completely?
I suppose the best that they could hope for would be for Tuchel, Guardiola and Klopp to sod off somewhere else. That would help for starters, because they are, and certainly the Liverpool and Chelsea, Liverpool and City coach are the two best on the planet for me, and we're seeing that in those performances. But I think patience, I think hard work. I'm seeing a lot of disinterested players, even in last night's performance. Guys that have lost their way, like Marcus Rashford, like Jadon Sancho, who did come on and look lively, but don't spend 100 million plus to come on and look lively now and again. I'm looking for consistency. Rafael Varane, who's had a problematic season, Harry Maguire, who's lost his form. So I think, one, they're looking at getting some of the dead wood out, bringing some fresh faces in, seeing a structure and a pattern of play that we know City have, and we certainly know Liverpool have. It's different, but it's their way. And we know Chelsea have a certain way as well, but we have no idea what United are. The fact that this guy's come in from Germany in an interim period, Ralf Rangnick, with this reputation, he's not been able, I think, to make any changes whatsoever. He's not given us a clue to what they might be about. In fact, if anything, they've got worse. And I think they need to see something tangible. I go back to this point. When Jurgen Klopp took over at Liverpool 6.5 years ago, and they were a struggling side at the time in a generalisation about winning the league. They were miles off that. They went to White Hart Lane in his first game, and he had literally been in the door 48 hours and given a press conference. The first 20 minutes, half an hour at White Hart Lane, it wasn't about the football. I'd never seen a Liverpool team work that hard off the ball. And I thought, wow, this is what they're going to do. Now, it took him a while to get that footprint cast in stone with recruitment and hard work and time. But we saw something, Mark. We saw something tangible. And we haven't seen that recently from any Man United coach. And I think that's what United fans want to see. What's going to be the way forward? Are we going to be better? Do these players want to be here? And can I see what this coach is trying to implement? That would be a start, because in the last few years, we've seen absolutely none of those skill sets. And that's one of the many reasons, this juggernaut of a club has been left in the doldrums. It's been left mired in the mediocrity of the Premier League, but for the odd flashing second place finish, flash in the pan, they're back where they belong at the moment, between the Arsenals, the Tottenhams, the West Hams, and those other clubs fighting for that fourth spot in Europa League places. And they got to be better than that.
Thanks so much for watching ESPN on YouTube. And for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for premium content and live streaming, subscribe to ESPN Plus.